Hi, guys. Time for Bible ABCs again. Hope you've had a wonderful week, and let's get to it. Hope you're doing well, too. All right. So let's recap. We're on the second line. This is crazy. All right. So we started Bible ABCs. A for Aaron, Moses' older brother. B for Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, 66 books altogether. Then we went C for Christ, which is another name for Jesus. Talked about other names for Jesus. D was for David. We talked about characteristics of David that made him such a wonderful Bible character and a man after God's own heart. E was for eyes. We learned about how Jesus was able to heal the blind man by spitting into the dirt, making some mud. And then we got that cool after story too about the blind man being taken before the Jewish leaders and being questioned about Jesus. F was for 40. We talked about a number. We talked about an Old Testament 40, the Noah reigning for 40 days and 40 nights when he and his family were on the ark. And then 40 in the New Testament was for the 40 days that Jesus fasted and then was tempted by the devil 3 times. And then last week we did G for Galilee. And we talked about how Jesus was on the boat with his apostles and in the Sea of Galilee. And there was a huge storm. And he jumped up when he was asleep. They woke him up, and he said, "Peace, be still." And the weather and the winds and the waves all stopped. So he has control over everything, over miracles, both connected with humans, but both connected to the elements as well, which is really cool. Which brings us up to the second line of the Bible alphabet, which is going to be H. So here we are with H. I promised you guys that it would be a person, and so kind of thought about doing King Herod. I mean, we could do him, but I think it's even more fitting to bring a great biblical woman into our Bible ABCs. And so this week, I present to you H for Hannah. Maybe you've heard Hannah before. She's pretty fantastic. She doesn't have a whole, there's not a book about her or anything like that, but she does have a very key role, and she's has some wonderful takeaways from her Bible story. So we find about Hannah in the Old Testament. So she's going to be in 1 Samuel, and if you guys are practicing your Old Testament books, you know that there's a 1st and a 2nd Samuel. So keep that in mind. We'll hear more about that in just a bit. So yeah, let's jump in and talk about Hannah. So one thing to note, we're going to jump in. Hannah had a husband, and at that time, a lot of women were wanting to have families. Women still want to have families today. It's not just a thing that happened a long time ago. But this was something that was really on her heart that she really desired. And so maybe there's something, too, that you want so badly. Maybe you prayed to God about it, and maybe you've gotten a yes, maybe you've gotten a no. We'll talk a little bit about prayer a little bit later. But the thing, again, that Hannah wanted the most was to have a son, and she really wanted a son. So in this first picture here, we have Hannah, and she's crying. So here she is with her husband. He knows that she wants a son, and he's trying to comfort her, and it just hasn't happened yet for Hannah, and she's very upset, and the Bible tells us that she even stopped eating because she was so upset and didn't have a son. So this was really hard for her, and even though she probably went about her day and did other things, and maybe smiled every now and then, in her heart she was really carrying around a bit of sadness. And so that's where Hannah's story starts for us. And so every year her and her family would go to the temple to give a sacrifice. And so while she was there, she decided to take her prayer and her sadness and kind of raise it up to God in prayer. And while she was there, there was a priest named Eli who overheard her prayer. I say overheard, he actually didn't hear. Now here's something that's kind of interesting. So you can see Hannah's still crying, very upset because she really, really wants that son. And as she was praying, the Bible tells us that her mouth was moving and her tears, and she was so sad, but no words were coming out. And so Eli was like, "I see her mouth moving, but she's not really, don't hear anything. She's probably had too much wine and she's not coherent of what she's saying. And so he actually went up to her and he said, you need to leave because clearly you're no position to be in the temple, let alone praying, because you've had a little too much fun. And she replied, oh, I'm just so sad, and oh, this is important too, her prayer. So prior to Eli coming, she told God that if you give me a son, I will give him back to you. So let's remember that. That's going to be a keeper for later on. So Eli says, you need to scat, and she's like, oh, I'm just so sad. And he said, well, whatever you're asking the Lord for, he will grant it for you. And then that's it. He leaves. She goes back home. Hopefully, maybe she's feeling a little bit better. The Bible doesn't say that, she got immediate relief right away, after all that. But in due time, she goes home and she becomes pregnant. And she has a son. Now, here's where the book of the Bible comes in. She names her son Samuel. And so she had her son. You can imagine after waiting so long for him, holding him, kissing him, looking at his hair, his eyes, his toes. He's so perfect, maybe even better than she ever imagined. So she's so happy to have her son. And so we could stop the Bible story there, or the Bible could have stopped the story there. But Hannah keeps going, because you could think that, well, this was a story about prayer. She prayed for a son, and she got a son. Yay, God answers prayers. But Hannah's story goes a little bit further, because if you remember, back when she was in the temple and praying and Eli heard her, she said, God, if you give me a son, I will give him back to you. So kind of interesting way to picture how that's going to play out. But the way it plays out for Hannah is that Eli does get older, but Samuel gets older too. And once he's of age, Hannah keeps her promise and she takes him back to the temple. And she leaves him with Eli so he can be raised in the temple. And this is so interesting, too, because the Bible tells us that when she got there, she told Eli, you remember me? Remember me from a couple years ago? Here's my little guy. And so she's kind of like or I guess, Samuel, he's a walking, answer to a prayer. He's, a prayer answered right there in front of him. And so you can imagine, she really wanted her son so badly, and then now she's giving him up, but that's the promise that she made with God. And I think that that's such a good takeaway from the story as well. But before I talk about that, just wanted to say that, Samuel's going to grow up in the temple with Eli and have a really amazing life. And it talks about how his mom would visit and she would bring him extra clothes as he grew out of them, a growing boy in the temple. And so she was also blessed with other children as well. And so, the good takeaways are from Hannah's story is to pray, right? She prayed for a long time before she ever got a yes to her prayer. And that's true for us today, right? So sometimes we pray and we get yeses immediately. Sometimes we get no's. Sometimes we get not nows. And that's what Hannah got. She got a not now. It just wasn't the right time for whatever reason. And that's okay. She got her son and she was able to fulfill that promise that she made to God in the temple. And that's another thing too, keeping a promise. Because you can imagine that maybe when she had her son, it wouldn't be wild for us to think, oh, maybe she had some second thoughts, like, oh, he's so cute, God, I didn't know he was going to be this cute. Do I really have to give him up? No, the Bible doesn't talk about that at all. And so she willingly gave her son back to God, knowing that the only reason she had him was because of God, which is very special. So that's our lesson about Hannah today. It's not too long, but again, Samuel has a super incredible life, and it all starts with his mom and her desire to have a son, and then her willingness to be prayerful about it and to wait for it, for sure, which is really important. So as far as our activity today, this one's kind of fun. So they've all been fun, but maybe this one's a little more fun, right? So for our Bible lesson today, Jade. Bible lessons, Hannah. But for our activity, what it is, it's a picture of Hannah at the temple praying. I didn't draw this one, I drew the other. So this Hannah doesn't look like my Hannah. But anyway, there's a bunch of hidden items in this drawing. So you can kind of maybe see one right there, but there's a list up here at the top of the ones that you can find. So give those a look-see-loo, print it off, see if you can find those hidden items, and then you can color the picture too. But you could also maybe print off, if your parents are okay with it, maybe printing off a couple of them and having a contest between you and your family members who can find them first. That's always fun. Competition is always fun. And yeah, I think that's it for today. But hope you guys have a wonderful week. And I hope you think a little bit about the story of Hannah this week and continue on with your prayers, knowing that God hears them and that He is always listening. He's always available to receive our prayers. And we should always be taking things to Him. The big things, the little things. He wants that open communication with us, and He wants to hear from us, and He definitely wants to hear from you guys as well. But I hope you have a great week. It's getting warm. I was about to say finally warm. I feel like we've had a couple of warm days, but getting a little bit warmer now. So hopefully you can go outside, maybe enjoy the sunshine. Maybe have to take some allergy pills. You never know. But I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'm thinking about you, and hope to see you soon. But if not, we'll jump on to I next week. There's a lot of ways we can go with I. We might do a brother pair. We might do a place. Might do a person. Sky's the limit with I. It's going to be epic. But look forward to sharing it with you next week, and enjoy. Bye, guys.